All right, so today we are going to talk about assisted movements that you might see on certain days in the gym. Assisted movements could be called a couple different things. We could call them ancillary or corrective movements or maintenance movements. The difference between an assisted movement and, say, a functional movement like a squat, a deadlift, a press is assisted movement might be a singular joint, might be more concentrated on one muscular area than a whole body kind of unit. I'll kind of give you examples here in a second, but the assisted movements are going to be kind of an isolated kind of exercise, or like an isometric, like a holding kind of exercise. So what are some examples that you might see? And I've kind of broken it down into 3 different classifications. So we have our gymnastics, our weighted kind of assisted movements, and then our corrective assisted movements. The gymnastics is going to be like our plank, our front leaning raise, hollow body, kip, candlestick. The list can go on. I can name 50 different more. Same thing with the weight. There's just a couple. So like bent over rows, kettlebell squat holds, barbell hip thrusts. So those are a couple examples of that. And then corrective movements, and we've been seeing a lot of these, is the band pull aparts, the glute bridges, banded walks, scapular push-ups, GHD hip extensions. So those are kind of the examples of what I classify as assisted movements versus the other major functional movements, like I said, like a squat or deadlift. Why do we do these? I think the biggest question that is being asked, why do we do this? Number one is body awareness. We need to know how our body moves in space. A lot of people don't know how to move their hips, or how to move their shoulders or scapula the correct way, or what keeping your core tight means. So mostly it's going to be body awareness. Foundational strength. So going back to kind of the gymnastics, I use that as an example. We don't want to start by trying to do a muscle up first before we have a pull up. That's kind of obvious. So even before that, we need to build our core strength so that we learn how to kip. We learn how to keep our core tight. We learn how to just do the basic foundational movements of the gymnastics. And that applies to the weightlifting too, just generally foundational strength in certain areas of whether it's the back, the shoulders, the legs, whatever it might be. And then correct movement pattern. If we can't squat down right, or if we can't go from A to B in the correct sequence, this is going to teach us a good movement pattern. And then neurological utilization. And what does that mean? I know it's a big word, but it's basically teaching how your brain to work with your muscles so that you're going in the right pattern. And a lot of times this is one of the big things as far as getting stronger and doing the movement correctly. That's kind of one of the higher of the 2 points of why we do this. And then general areas of weakness. As far as our membership base goes, as far as most of us go in America, we sit down most of the time. Our hips and our shoulders, especially our upper back strength and our glutes and hamstring strength, are really tight and really weak. So this is some movements to help utilize it, to help get it stronger, rather than doing a pull-up and not being able to do a pull-up, or doing a squat wrong and just saying squat more to be better. It's not going to work. So that's why we do these movements. So kind of gave you the examples and the why we do it. So what do we need to focus on when doing these things? And I think this is where we as a membership base, and just everyone in general when doing this, can get a little bit better. So keeping the right form and not just trying to get through the movement is going to be a big part. So when we do a squat, we think about getting from point A to point B and then back to point A, so up and down. So when we do something like a plank, we need to not just hold our body up, but we need to focus on keeping our core tight. We need to focus on utilizing the right muscles that we're trying to work on. Glute bridges, we're trying to drive through our heel, use our hamstring, and use the glute to lift us up and not use anything else. So they're very isolated, and you have to be very concentrating on what you're using and keeping the right position. If we're not, then we're not going to get the effect out of the movement, and it's really not going to help us in the long run. Like I said, concentrating on the area being utilized. I've already kind of gone into that. And then the last and the final thing is more weight isn't better, or increased resistance if we're using a band isn't better. So, or don't make the difficulty harder. So more weight if we're doing a row and you're not keeping the right form, but you're getting it from point A to point B, kind of like I explained earlier, it's not necessarily better to go up in weight. It would be better to go down in weight and get the right form back, so we're using the right area to be concentrated on. Or level of difficulty. I'll use hollow body position. And I've told people to go down to the easiest form a lot of times. And some people want to lift their legs in their hands, but sometimes doing the simplest form and working on the simplest part of the movement and trying to get that correct before we move on, instead of trying to make it harder on yourself, is going to be a lot better for you in the long run. So again, that kind of goes back to body awareness and increased muscular ability or neurological ability in that. But again, assisted movements, you see a lot of them. Try to do at least one every day, if not one every other day, to work on areas as a general, as far as the gym needs. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask your coach why we're doing it, what we're concentrating on as far as musculature or gymnastics or weight, whatever it goes, and make sure you apply all this.